Ivan Briscoe is a senior policy director at International Crisis Group. He's now joining us live on the broadcast from United Kingdom. Mr. Ivan, thank you very much for making time for us and welcome to the broadcast. What do you think will happen in the near future before the midterm elections happen in the United States? Do you think President Donald Trump will go ahead with his plan to invade, and I put that in quotes, Cuba?
Thank you very much for having me on. I think it's difficult to say at this stage, really, whether there is a plan to invade. We just don't know whether the US has got the will to go into Cuba to carry out a strike which may get very bloody and very complicated quite soon. There's no guarantee that they're going to have the same success as they had in Venezuela in January. And there are lots of uncertainties about whether the Cuban regime, which has long resisted the United States, which has fought off previous US attacks, will give in. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it will be a huge risk, I think, for Trump to order such a strike before the midterms or after the midterms, for that matter. But what there is no doubt is that the pressure on Cuba is mounting. It has been increasing since Trump came back to power in 2025, and obviously with the sort of quasi-blockade of oil in place since January, the tightening noose of sanctions, the legal indictments against Raul Castro and other figures in the regime. So the threatening words which have come from Trump and other senior officials, I mean, taken together, that represents a huge difficulty for Cuba, where the conditions on the ground, as your report has said, are incredibly difficult. 6 national blackouts since the start of the year.
Ivan, good evening. Shreya here. This is what I was coming to next, that, since there are so many domestic challenges that Cubans are facing at the moment, would the communist regime give in to the kind of pressure that is coming in from the Trump administration? And I also want to bring in Marco Rubio into the picture, because this is the man who's being credited for all this pressure and the push towards, reformation within the Cuban government or of the Cuban government from the United States side.
And that's the preferred option of the United States. They believe that by putting all this pressure on, making the economy of Cuba basically untenable, effectively starving the country of energy, that eventually the government would give in, would make very serious, deep reforms, and would allow the United States to become what it has become in Venezuela, which is to a certain degree the overseer, the sort of dominant power over the country, even if the government continues in Cubans' hands. But Cuba has resisted. I mean, anyone who knows anything about Cuban history since the revolution of 1959 would have predicted that. It's done this over decades. It has made some concessions, it must be said. It has promised to open up parts of its economy. There are negotiations which have been secretly underway between the United States and Cuban representatives. But I think where they're unable to make progress is the question of opening up the political system, Cuba being a single party state under the rule of the Communist Party, and to make those really deep economic reforms, to bring in US investment and to recognize maybe the property rights of those Cubans who had to go into exile after the revolution.
Mr. Ivan, very quickly and lastly, with the blackouts in Cuba, do you think there's any hand from the United States, and what could be the ramifications of that?
Well, I mean, there's clearly a hand in the sense that the United States has imposed pretty much a blockade on oil going to the country. It stopped the supplies coming from Venezuela once it arrested Nicolas Maduro in January, and it threatened any country supplying oil to Cuba with tariffs. So it has effectively deterred oil coming from anywhere else, although some ships very occasionally have got through. So, I mean, that is the core of the measure. Now, you mentioned Rubio. I mean, Rubio is very interesting because Rubio on one side is the son of Cuban parents who went to leave for the United States. He feels very strongly about this. This has been a theme throughout his political career. And in some ways, he's reported to be the person who's driving this at the moment, who's left the Iran issue in the hands of others, but is driving Cuba. At the same time, in some of his public comments, he seems to be a little bit more moderate than others might suggest. So it's uncertain how this might go still.
Mr. Ivan Briscoe, it's good to see you. Thank you very much for all your insights and for talking to Race to Power today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.